our company comes from a place that is genuine, and myself and everybody that I work with on our team, we have a genuine and a dedicated approach to solving problems that affect people with autism. And there's a lot of companies out there that are kind of in it for the wrong reasons, I'd say.
They see a market opportunity like, oh, nobody's doing this, I'll do this.
Exactly.
Right.
Whereas, every night of my life, I'm thinking about, my brother, and I'm thinking about the people like him who are struggling right now every single day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening whenever you may be listening, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast, a live edition of our podcast. So thank you all for coming to this edition of the podcast. And also want to thank our hosts tonight, Duende, for hosting us tonight at this incredible event space. Before we get started with the podcast, I want to let you know that there are just a few days left to register for the inaugural Code Buffalo Hackathon. It's taking place on June 14th to 16th. So if you're a developer, programmer, designer, this is definitely something you're going to want to check out. So if there are folks in your organizations or folks you know who are programmers or developers, tell them to head on over to 43north.org or Eventbrite and search for Code Buffalo. It's actually a really great opportunity because the winning team will walk away with $10,000. So pretty impressive prize structure this year. We couldn't have done it without the support of Techstars, ACV Auctions, BNMC, and of course 43 North. So like I said, head on over to 43 North or Eventbrite, search for Code Buffalo, and you can register for that event. And the registration ends on Monday, so only a couple days left. All right, should we get started? Yes. I hope you're really excited for an engaging conversation tonight with a fantastic founder, one of the 2018 43 North portfolio winners. Ladies and gentlemen, Nadia Hamilton. If you want to bring your beer, you can bring your beer. Best question of the night by far. That's might as well call it a night, folks. So, Nadia, how are you tonight? You are on.
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Thank you. Your energy is going to dwarf mine, so I'm not even going to try to compete. So periodically, I'm a one-man band, so I'm gonna periodically be adjusting levels, checking my recording. So just ignore me and focus on Nadia, which is the way it should be, really, right, Nadia?
That's right. Always.
And we're gonna make sure we get you home in time for the Toronto Raptors game.
That's right. It starts at 9.
That's right.
No, Nate, it starts at 9, but I got to be home at 8 to change and get ready, get food, get beverages. Everything's got to be set.
7:30 is our kind of cutoff.
7:30.
We should be done well before that. So, Nadia, why don't you give us the quick pitch, who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I'm Nadia Hamilton. I'm founder and president of Magnusmode, and I started this company for such a simple reason. My brother Troy has autism, and growing up, I used to help him to do things around the home by drawing out step-by-step instructions for things like brushing teeth or getting dressed. So I'd post them to the walls of our apartment where we grew up. And Troy would go into the bathroom and he'd look above the bathroom sink and then he'd follow the instructions to do things on his own. Because people with autism often struggle with day-to-day tasks that you and I might take for granted. So by drawing out these instructions, Troy was afforded kind of greater structure and agency to do these things on his own. Magnusmode is a company that I founded basically to bridge the gap between where people like Troy end up after high school to the real world. And what we do is we leverage mobile technology to help people like Troy to navigate life day to day. And our first product is MagnusCards. And what it does is it digitalizes and gamifies this step-by-step hand-drawn paradigm that I invented for my brother when he was growing up. So digital step-by-step guides for things like taking the bus or going grocery shopping or going to a movies or using a bank card. And it all exists in a mobile app, and these guides are sponsored by corporations like banks and restaurants and transit agencies who want to welcome, engage, connect, and enable people with autism to use their products and services.
What I love about talking to a founder is, in one question, they can answer 7.
Sorry, Dave.
So I'm just going to throw this page away. No. So you started Magnusmode in 2012, but before we kind of get into more of what you were just talking about, What was life like before that? Where'd you grow up? What was the family like? Things like that.
Well, I grew up in a little hamlet in Toronto called Scarborough. It kind of looks like Hobbit Town, like in Lord of the Rings. So there's a lot of green. There's small houses.
Were you the tallest in Scarborough?
Yeah, I was
okay.
one of the tallest. Yeah, I played volleyball growing up and all different sports as well. And I pretty much leveraged my height because I'm not that coordinated. So I just leveraged my height to just stop people. And so I grew up in Hobbit Town, and we did a lot of gardening, my family and I, and things that hobbits do, like eating. And I went to U of T, and I studied University of Toronto, and I studied history and political science because I love history and I love political science.
So naturally, you became a tech founder.
That's right. It was just, it was meant to be, as you can imagine. I think, I love those two subjects, but my real passion was always helping people with autism. And, growing up with my brother, that's what I did in our home. But I also helped people throughout the community. So I went into their homes and I helped them to do things like make spaghetti or, get ready for school or what to do when you're waiting for mom to come home. And so when I graduated from U of T, I was like, okay, what do I really want to do with the rest of my life? And I'm sitting there one day and I was just kind of looking at my brother playing his video games. And I'm like, my brother is so smart and he's so wonderful. Like, he's the most inspiring and beautiful person you'll ever meet. And yet he just needs that little bit of extra support. So in that moment, I was like, that's really all I want to do. I want to help people like Troy to have all the opportunities that you and I do. And so I took my love of, people and people with special needs and my kind of crazy predilection to just do whatever I think of, and I started a company.
As one does, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You kind of answered this, my next question, which is, what was your why? But so rather than answer that, can you kind of, was there a moment, a very specific moment that you're like, you identified the problem and you realized you were the one who could solve the problem?
Well, I think, my family's comprised of like lawyers and police officers and people in the army, like very stable and very secure.
So
kind of like Canadian, yeah.
Canadian Thanksgiving's fun for you, right?
Very Canadian.
Yeah.
We want to we're conservative by nature, and we don't, we're not really risk takers. I guess I hope Canadians don't like come after me with pitchforks or whatever. But anyway,
our listenership in Canada is actually quite small, so you should be okay.
So when I told my parents, I'm like, I think I'm going to start a company, they were like, at first they were a little bit shocked because they're like, well, where's the security in that? But then they're like, oh, it's Nadia. She's always kind of going against the grain, and when you say go left, she'll go right. And, I just always was doing my own thing. And even like yesterday, we had a games night with the another 43 North company, and I just instinctively disobey the rules. And I'm playing my own game within the game.
The rules don't apply to me. I'm going to play my way.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't know. For me, it wasn't like, oh, it's me. I have this mission and I have to do it and I'm going to be the one. It was more like, this is my brother and I love my brother, and this is my job as a sister, is to make sure that, I'm looking out for my family. And so it wasn't really a big choice for me. It was just kind of like, okay, here's a problem. My brother is struggling and I'm going to do something about it. And, it's no hero complex or anything like that.
Well, I think it's a very noble way to found a company.
Thank you.
Now, like any good host, I was supposed to say in the beginning of the show, there will be a portion of this that we open up to the audience for Q&A. So as we're talking tonight, make sure you're thinking of potential questions that I might not think of, and you'll have the opportunity to ask Nadia. So Nadia, you founded Magnusmode in 2012. What was that first year like?
Well, how it actually got started was I heard about a social business competition from the Center for Social Innovation in Toronto, and I decided to enter that competition to win the funding to start my company. So I entered and I won. It was an international competition, but based in Toronto. And I won, and so the first year I was like, I have a degree in history and political science. What the heck do I do? I don't know anything about business. I had no experience. So I actually didn't start right away. So I incorporated the company because I was like, oh, I know I should do that to protect it. But then I didn't go to work. So I was still finishing up school, and I was working as a support worker in other people's homes that had special needs like autism, Asperger's, Down syndrome, etc. And then I was also researching. So I did a lot of volunteering growing up with Autism Ontario. And so I was getting groups of parents together and asking them, making sure that the need that I had identified was also the need that they had. So I was talking to a lot of people and going for coffee and dinner and lunch, and also just thinking about, okay, so now that I have this small amount of funding to start the company, what does that look like? I am also a chess player. So, I was champion in Toronto for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, just a small detail. Chess champion of Toronto.
It was like 14, 15, 16 years old, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
You're talking to the checkers champion of the Benson home, so.
All right, we got to have a match, you and me.
It's on.
So before, being a chess player, before I make a move, I often had to think about all the pieces and understand how they worked and, what's going to happen 12 moves down the line. So, I was pretty much examining the board for a couple, like a year and a half before I got started. And then I finally was like, okay, I got to move. I just got to move. And so I started to make moves and I started to execute on the early stages of the plan. And that was kind of the first year was a little bit slow. The first couple of years were very slow and isolated, I'd say, because I didn't really know what I was doing. And I also don't like to spend or waste money. I'm a little bit of my friends know me as a little bit of a cheapskate because I just hate shopping or anything like that. And especially if it's not my money, I'm hesitant to spend it. So anyway, I was doing a lot of research, and then so the first year was basically exploratory. And am I ready to take this leap? Am I crazy enough to take a breath and jump off the cliff into the unknown and potentially bring other people along with me into the unknown?
Starting out can be, especially kind of being a one-person shop, one-person startup. It can be kind of lonely and daunting. Like statistically, a lot of people struggle with some mental health issues when they found a company. Did you was there any moments where it was like lonely, trying to solve your problem, and did you kind of experience was there any point where you're like, nope, this isn't for me, I'm gonna go teach or something else? Like, was there a day you decided, you almost threw in the towel?
My personality is such that I don't really like to quit, and I don't like to throw in the towel. So I often, if I'm facing a brick wall, I'll get frustrated and I'll be like, oh, this sucks, blah, 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 there's a problem. But I also love to solve problems. So when there's a problem, I'm like, all right, here's the problem. Here's it from this angle. Here's it from that angle. And thinking about all the potential moves on the board. And then when I find one, sometimes it takes longer than I would like, and I get frustrated, and patience is not my virtue. Patience is not my virtue. And
we found the one Canadian who's not patient. It's great.
I will apologize profusely. I'm Canadian in every other way, eh? But, I tend to just be kind of a go-getter and have an athletic mindset as well. So, there's many times when I've fallen, I've made mistakes, and I've screwed up, and I thought, okay, that this is probably going to be the end. But then I'm like, no, I'm not going to let it be the end. I'm going to win. I'm a Raptor.
Right.
Yeah.
We the North.
That's right.
This is one of my favorite questions, and most entrepreneurs hate it because I'm big into failure. What's been the hardest day or biggest mistake you've made as an entrepreneur, and what did you learn from it?
Let's see. There've been a lot of mistakes. The first idea for the company was actually not digital mobile or app cards. It was actually printed cards. So I thought that I was going to print thousands of cards and distribute them around the world for people with autism. You
apparently founded this company in 1910. We got ourselves a printing press.
Well, I like the idea of the baseball card, the collectible baseball card, and I was like, okay, I want to do that. And then I was realizing, oh wait, everybody has phones. Everybody has phones. They're easily accessible, and they also are socially acceptable. So you're not pointing anybody else. Excuse me, maybe I should have left the beer. Burpee.
Now I have to edit. We can't have belching on the podcast now.
So I think there were a couple times when I'm I have no idea what I'm doing, but luckily for me, and I attribute a lot of the success we've had to date to this fact, is that I've had such incredible help from mentors and guidance from people who really cared. about the mission and the vision, and who gave me their time and their resources and their investment and their money. And I am so appreciative of that, because there might have been a time when I was like, okay, I can't do this. But I always had those kind of sounding boards to be like, okay, here's where I'm stuck. And here's what I think I need to do. Like, is this right? Is this like the next step that I should take? And what do you think? So I think, like, in a way, I've been lucky in a sense to have people in my life along the journey that can point me in the right direction and keep me from making mistakes that could be disastrous. Although there have been mistakes that were disastrous, but allowed me to recover swiftly from them.
You kind of mentioned what MagnusCards are. Can you talk a little bit about, switching from 15th century technology of printed materials to,
history major, okay? I live in the 15th century when I'm not working.
Would the original incarnation been handwritten?
My favorite movie is Braveheart, okay?
Yeah. So how did you decide that app was the way to go?
So I guess it was because I was walking down the street and I saw everybody had this technology piece. But you know what? There are days when I regret it.
Really?
Yeah, there are days when I seriously regret it, because I'm not a technology person. So I'm not a programmer, and I like to control.
Sure.
So having a big part of your company that you can't really control is very difficult. Because I'm like, there's a problem, there's a bug, fix it, to somebody like a programmer on our team. And he's like,
and
yeah.
Go, what's the bug?
Well, he's like, yeah, it's going to take probably about 2 weeks. I'm like, what do you mean? Just fix it. Just fix it. What's the problem?
Crunch some things.
Yeah, just type some words and put a dash there, and it's done.
Yeah.
He's like, doesn't work like that. I'm like, oh, idiot. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Just kidding.
Sorry, Valentine.
So you mentioned there are brands partnering with you to develop specific MagnusCards. When did you realize that going kind of the brand route was the appropriate way? Because you could have made generic cards of like, here's how you brush your teeth, here's how you ride the bus.
That's actually how it started. So I was actually making all the cards with me and Troy. Me and Troy were making all of these cards, like going and taking pictures by the bus and stuff like that.
Kind of going through his day-to-day.
Yeah, going through the day-to-day, and I'm like, okay, this is not going to work on a larger scale. And from day one, I wanted to have a global company, because I thought, what if Troy was born in Egypt, or what if he was born in I don't know, Vietnam? There's so many Troys worldwide, and the problem is everywhere. The challenges are everywhere, and they're similar. There's different, but they're similar. But going back to your question, what was your question?
Thanks, Nadia. Brands have kind of clung to the, how did brands, but you kind of raised the point, like, for me, riding the bus here, or riding the bus in France, or riding the bus in Vietnam might be a very similar process, but to somebody living with autism, that process is probably completely different, right?
That's right. So about the brands, so basically it was not like sustainable for us to make every single type of card deck. So I was on a talk show one day, and also the grant money that I had won to start the company was running out. So I'm like, oh, we don't have any revenue. Like, what are we going to do? So I was on this talk show, this Canadian talk show called Steve Pakin's The Agenda. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but anyway, it's popular in Canada.
For the listeners at home, no hands went up. Sorry, Steve.
Steve is turning in his hotel suite right now. So didn't want to say grave because he's not dead. So anyway, so I was on his show, and then I was talking about MagnusCards and what we do, and then after the show, I got a call from the Royal Ontario Museum and CAMH and a couple other organizations in Canada, and they're like, that's a great idea. Can we sponsor guides in your app that show people how to navigate our museum, how to navigate our spaces and our processes?
And you're like, yes.
And I'm like, yes!
For a fee.
That's a great idea. So, I mean, the first fee was like, it was really low. Like, we weren't covering our costs, because I was like, I had no idea what to do. And then
was it?
It was like it was a giveaway.
Was it like the scene in Ghostbusters where they do the first ghost bust, and like Egon and Peter are just sitting there, and Peter's like 4,003, like they're making it up as they go. Was there any rhyme or reason?
It's pretty much, yeah, it's pretty much made up. I was like,
I thought that Ghostbusters joke would have gone a lot further, people. I invite you to go to the bar.
I don't really remember that scene, but I think it's relevant.
Wow, do I feel old? Thanks. I don't remember Ghostbusters. Okay, well, I'm just going to let you talk then.
So yeah, I threw kind of a number, and I'm like, because from my background, humble little Canadian, I'm like, okay, this sounds good. And then we ended up like seriously losing money on that.
Lesson
Then I'm
learned.
like, yeah, let's cost it out going forward and
Let's
try
double
to
the next one.
Yeah.
Just to see how it goes. So who's working on new decks with you? Can you kind of give us some insight of who you've been working with? And I know you've had a recent local partnership as well.
Okay, so I'll just rhyme off a couple because I just love our partners.
List all your clients.
All
Go.
right, so there's over 45 now corporate sponsors or customers or whatever you want to call them. I like to refer to them as partners. I mean, they are paying, but I think that we're working together to achieve a great mission and vision and a legacy. But so CIBC is a big Canadian bank. It's one of the big five. So they have card decks on, how to use your debit card or, how to open a bank account or withdraw money from a ATM. Colgate Palmolive, based in New York City. So card decks on brushing teeth, on going to the dentist, on flossing and stuff like that. So step-by-step visual guides for their, basically, how to use their products to live more independently. And then we've got a bunch of airports. So Toronto Pearson Airport was the first, but then quickly we had other airports kind of reaching out to us. So we launched with San Francisco Airport a couple weeks ago, McCarran Airport. This week, it's not signed yet, but apparently it's going to be signed. So we've got I won't say the names, 3 more airports in the U.S.
That's vague enough, I think.
Yes.
3 airports in the U.S.
3 major airports in the U.S.
What do they rhyme with?
Most Memity
No.
and
Got it. I asked. It's my own fault. My apologies.
Transit organizations like Oakville Transit, Grand River Transit. We're talking with NFTA here in Buffalo, which is exciting. Let's see, restaurants, Tim Hortons. You guys have Tim Hortons?
Every block is there a Tim Hortons in Buffalo. We're, I think, per capita the most Tim Hortons in the world.
In the world, I don't know about that. What about Toronto? Every other house. A&W is a fantastic partner. And all of these partners, basically, they, in addition to developing the card decks, they do marketing to raise awareness about our partnership. So Colgate put us in Times Square, New York City. So people were walking by and seeing our ad, and I wasn't even there. I didn't even know it was there. And somebody sent me a picture of it. I'm like, oh, we're in Times Square, no way. and then who else? There's over 45. It's hard to keep track. But airports, restaurants, libraries, transit, travel. Justin, where's Justin? What am I missing?
I was going to say,
this is the bridge. This is the bridge to Buffalo. Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, we launched with our first Buffalo partner, which is Oshai Children's Hospital. So it's one of the preeminent hospitals in the world. And actually, I met them during the competition. So while we were, there was a night that we were all going to dinner as part of the finalists, and I'm like, I'm going to go and meet with Oshai instead.
I'm going to work.
Yeah, I'm going to work. So I went and I met with Allegra Jaros, and we had a great conversation. And a couple months later, we signed our agreement. And then a couple weeks ago, we launched with Oshai, and we had a wonderful launch event. It was media came out. We were on, I think, 4 or 5 different news stations. We had families come out who were talking about how they're utilizing the card decks in their everyday lives. They go to the hospital often, and so this aids them in decreasing stress around their visits and helping them to have a more welcoming and inclusive experience.
I think the stat you said on 40th North Stages, there's about 22,000 people living with autism in Western New York, and many
That's
of them
right.
go through Oshai's, for regular,
Well, those are only the people who are diagnosed.
Right.
So I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people who aren't, and I think we're all on the spectrum. I mean, there's plenty of weird things about me.
It's not that type of podcast. We're not. I like to consider myself a professional, but I'm not going to diagnose you here. It's obviously impressive the number of brands you're working with. Can you kind of give us some insights into the number of users MagnusCards has?
Between 35,000 and 65,000
That's
users
fantastic.
in North America. We do have other users across the world, but it's mostly concentrated here in North America. Yeah.
Why then? That's a fantastic stat, especially for a young tech company like yourself.
Thank you.
Especially because it's such a niche. It's not for everyday users. It's very specific audience. Why are MagnusCards such a good solution then for those living with autism?
Well, I think it's because, well, there's a couple of things that I think encapsulate the beauty of the delivery of the app. And one is its simplicity. So it's just these digital cards that you would collect and view and swipe through and reenact what you see. Another thing I think is our character. So we have this character that was actually designed by me and my brother. So I drew out like hats and I also draw hats, shirts, and pants and stuff like that. And then Troy chose which ones he wanted to compile to make this character. And I named him Magnus because Magnus means great. And Mode, which is Magnusmode is the name of our company, Mode means way of doing things. So great way of doing things. The idea behind Magnus was, I wanted to create the most amazing character that could be helpful and yet engaging. And also to be there when I couldn't, so a companion or a sibling or even a parent that never leaves. And so the opportunity with Magnus and why this is such a great fit for this audience is because we grew up playing video games in our household. We are a video gaming family. And when you think about Super Mario or Zelda, Link, and other characters like that, they really engage people with autism. People in general, but people with autism love these characters. And my brother loves video games and the characters. And so I think that there's a fantastic opportunity to bring this character to life. First in the app as a 2D illustration. So he's an illustration right now, but think about bringing him to life as a personal assistant, augmented reality. All of these organizations that we're working with, these companies, they have, a lot of them have storefronts. Museums have kiosks. Magnus can show up wherever you go. So imagine you walk by a grocery store and Magnus pops out on your phone and says, "Do you need help? Your fridge is empty. You're out of milk." You know what I mean? Like these things that encourage and foster independence and inclusion, Magnus can be a real conduit to that. So that's one thing. Another thing, I'd say.
Tell me all your ideas. Go.
Another thing, reason I think is, I think our company comes from a place that is genuine. And myself and everybody that I work with on our team, we have a genuine and a dedicated approach to solving problems that affect people with autism. And there's a lot of companies out there that are kind of in it for the wrong reasons, I'd say.
They see a market opportunity like, oh, nobody's doing this, I'll do this.
Exactly. Right. Whereas, every night of my life, I'm thinking about, my brother, and I'm thinking about the people like him who are struggling right now every single day. And, one of your questions later on, I think, is about, what the legacy that we want to build. And when
So let's jump to that question. Finish the sentence. I know Magnusmode will be a success when?
Well, yeah. So I know we'll be a success when on the day that millions of people worldwide with autism we're able to say that we've helped millions of people worldwide with autism to achieve greater independence and inclusion in their day-to-day lives in a measurable way. And I also think I'll know it's a success when someone's diagnosed with autism, a parent or a caregiver has greater peace of mind in what the future could hold. So, there's a lot of uncertainty for parents. There's a lot of stress and anxiety. And what we want to do is create independence for the person with autism, but also greater freedom and confidence for the caregiver. So it's a double-edged kind of opportunity that we're approaching.
Looking back at the early years, what would Nadia today go back and tell Nadia back then? What have you learned? I've learned so much. I think one of the things that I would tell myself would be to have greater patience with other people who may not understand autism right away or special needs right away. Also, I think it would be to be more self-aware. So like, I'm still working on this, but I think like one of the things that I could have done better earlier on was just to basically be able to see things from other people's perspectives more, and I think that would help in the team building aspect. In that, I'm coming from this, it's my world, I know it inside out. Yeah. And
to be able to explain to other people and lead them on this journey with me, even when it gets super, super hard from day to day, is a skill that I'm still developing. And I think that if I were to go back, I would teach myself more about some qualities of leadership that I didn't have in the past.
So you moved to Buffalo as part of the 4th North program.
And I love my apartment. I love it. I love it. Like, so when I lived in Toronto, my apartment, when I moved out from my parents, I was pretty...
It's about the size of the rug,
Yeah,
right?
it's about the size of the rug. Yeah. It is pretty crappy.
It's nice, yeah.
I can do yoga in my living room. It's huge and all this stuff, and it's really nice. And
so how's that transition? How's the transition been?
Well, to me, honestly, it's a great middle ground. Because for us, like, it's a soft landing to the U.S. We've always wanted to be expanded to the U.S. It's a bigger population. There's more people with autism, etc. However, I'm a family girl. I love being near my family, and I need to be near my family, especially my brother. Like,
sure.
I feel weird if I don't see my brother after a long time. I feel sad, and so I like to be near him. He's my best friend. And so in Buffalo, I can go to Toronto in an hour and 15 minutes and see my brother and see my family, and that was immeasurably important to me. Another thing that is fantastic about the transition to Buffalo is that you kind of act like Canadians and that you're friendly. The people, the people are so friendly here.
If Visit Buffalo Niagara is listening, I got a new slogan: Buffalo, basically Canada. So.
Well, I think it's great because, you know, Buffalo's known as the city of good neighbors, and I've definitely experienced that. So, like, when I go grocery shopping, or here's a funny story. So I was driving one of my first days here, and I accidentally went down a one-way street.
I did the same thing when I first moved here. Swear to God, yeah.
Yeah.
Which street was it for you?
Oh, I don't know.
I went down Niagara Falls Boulevard the wrong way in a 96 Dodge Neon. That, if you know that car, it doesn't move fast. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife, goes, "Honey, those lights are coming at us." And I did, Dukes of Hazzard style, U-turn as quick as I possibly could. So, yeah. So at least I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, and maybe it's a common thing because, like, the one-way streets there's not as many in Toronto. Well, at least where I was from.
And poorly marked. If anyone from the city's listening,
exactly.
Could you mark the streets better?
That's right. So I'm going down this one-way street, and I realize, because this guy starts coming towards me, and he's honking like crazy.
You're like, oh, he's really friendly.
And
he's
I'm like,
great.
No!
Hi, neighbor.
No, well, originally I thought, okay, so he turns around, he pulls up beside me, he rolls down his window, and I'm like, oh, he's going to tell me off. He's going to, like, swear at me. He's going to call me every name in the book. And I'm like, hi, sir.
I know what I've done.
And then he said, sweetheart, I just don't want you to get hurt.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a one-way street. If you want, you can go up that way. Where are you trying to get to? And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I was expecting him to, like, throw things in my car and stuff like that. Like, that's what would happen in Toronto. So, I thought that was a wonderful first experience in Buffalo. Another thing I love is the food. Like, lots of food choices. I love to eat. So I'm like a cow. I'm grazing all day.
What's your go-to place of
well, there's this Chinese place called Street Chinese or something like that I really like. I ordered on Uber Eats because I usually go to work, come home, have a little break, go to the gym,
realize you haven't eaten all day,
and then work while I'm eating again. So I order Uber Eats. I also like let's see, there's that market. What is it called? It's a fresh food. It's very fresh stuff, natural stuff. I can't remember.
Lexington Co-op? Or Fresh?
Lexington Co-op, yeah.
Co-op.
So that's nice. And then I took, Kelly and I went to a nice bakery the other day. So I just think there's lots of places to explore and to, for your taste buds to explore. And I also like it for sales opportunities because I'm able to travel really quickly from my house to the airport to places in your backyard like New York City and Boston and Chicago to make the connections that are going to basically further our business objectives.
So last question before we open it up for the audience, and it's the 40th North application season, so this is the boring question for the audience, but for the listeners at home, this is I'm able to market this and get more applicants. Why was 40th North a good option for Magnusmode?
Well, at first, I didn't even know about 43 North, so I was in Waterloo at the Accelerator Center, and then we were nominated by one of our mentors.
Okay.
And then I looked into it, and I'm like, okay, So A, we want to enter the U.S. B, it's right around the corner. It's in our backyard. So, I don't have to be too far from my family because that's literally the thing that was holding me back before. And then 3, I watched the videos. I watched the videos of former contestants and winners, and I spoke to them. So I reached out and I spoke to Bethany, and I spoke to other winners, and I went for coffee and lunch with them. And I said, okay, so what did you like about the program? What did you like about Buffalo? How's living in Buffalo? And I did my research because I'm a chess player, so I had to know. and then things started to click for me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I think I could be comfortable here.
So
and
did you hear that, Alex? The videos I produced brought Nadia here. So when we're in reviews in a few months, Okay, thanks.
Also, a really, really important thing for me is to be safe in the case of the zombie apocalypse. So if the zombie...
You and I had a great conversation about this at finals week, and I was just like, I love this Nadia. She's fantastic. She's already planning ahead.
Like, you gotta be ready, right? So, like, I liked how, it's a place that's surrounded by water, so zombies don't like water.
You've got Grand Island, so you blow the bridges.
That's
you're
right.
isolated
That's
on
right.
Island, and you're good to go.
I came here during the competition, and I just drove around. I'm like, okay, so where would the place I would go for? Like, look at this building. Look at the walls.
There's nothing getting through the. Yeah, go
it
into
can
one of the silos.
withstand blasts from marauders during the zombie apocalypse.
So let's open up the audience. Do you have any zombie-related questions for Nadia? As we no. So now this is your opportunity. If we didn't cover something, what would you like to know about Nadia and Magnusmode? Go ahead. Yeah. I probably ahead of time should have undone the Velcro on my cable here. So I'm still learning the ropes, guys. 10 years into broadcasting.
Thank you very much. My name is Fran Moyer, and I'm a counselor for students with disabilities. I work in the Student Access Center at SUNY Erie Community College. We have 3 campuses located in City, North, and South Towns. We have had a large population of autistic students, especially coming to my campus, so I have about 32 students. I love them. I love to learn from them. I love every one of their personalities. They're a challenge. So I've been doing a lot of research on autism, and these students are very intelligent, but some of them are not as high functioning as a college student would be. So we're looking at daily living skills. Excuse me. We actually had to get an aide for one student because of behavior issues in class, but he has all A's. So I'm wondering, this could be a marketing opportunity, Nadia. So it could be a lunch. Having lunch.
That's right.
So I'm wondering. I haven't heard about colleges. Have you had any requests to help with students with disabilities, with especially autism, in college?
It's a great question.
It is a great question, and thank you so much for your question, and I welcome the opportunity to meet with you for lunch. Food, come on. We have had people, numerous requests to reach out for elementary school, for high school, for university, for college. Because of the broad range of the spectrum, as you're probably aware of, and as you've described, it's really hard for us to accommodate everybody at once. It is in our plan, definitely, to support higher learning. The app right now is not specifically designed to support students or schools. However, it is part of our technological roadmap. So one of the things that I would love to speak with you about, perhaps over lunch, is how do we plan for that development? How do we put the facilities in place in the app now or during our next phase of development to be able to expand and support these individuals? Another area building on that is employment. So if you think about the spectrum of a lifespan, you got people 0 to 3, 3 to 5, and so on and so on. And we're kind of in this zone where it's kind of like high school to young adults is our sweet spot. Not quite the college years, but right before that, because that's the formative years when they're training for life beyond school. And the high school phase is the college phase is the natural next step. So, we're interested in partnerships to discover that and learn more about how we could potentially provide for that in the near future.
Great. Who else has a question? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
This is more of a fellow founder question. My name is Abby Spindleman, and I'm founder of Intimacy Live. And you, early on in what you were sharing was about mentorship and like in those moments of epic failure when you can like reach out to somebody and you're like, something's not working, what do I do? And you have that sort of sounding board. My question is, also someone in a niche kind of market, where do you find, or how did you find your founder or your mentors as a founder? And especially people that aren't necessarily focused in your same niche, how do you take what they're saying in a maybe unrelated market and apply it to yours? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So I was super lucky with my first mentor who became the first investor in my company as well. That competition I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast about how I entered the social business competition and won to start the company. She was actually in the audience. So I literally just told my story, and she came up to me afterwards and said, I actually have a nephew with autism. So there was a relationship there, and I was able to build on that. And then 6 months later, she's like, I would love to invest in your company and match the funding that you won, and let's go from there. But there's other mentors that I've had the opportunity of meeting throughout my life. I think being on programs like this and talking and telling your story as much as possible is really important. And I also think that you have to handpick the mentors as well. So there's been plenty of people who come to me and say, I want to mentor you. I'm like, but you're a mechanic. What are we going to do? So, I think you have to kind of pick the ones that are relevant and the ones that resonate with you and have a shared culture as well. I think that it's really important to find people who share your values and your beliefs. And for like a Canadian, that's really important for me too. I don't know if you'll get that, but but anyway, I think it's just really important for us to be like, friendly and honest and nice and humble. And so that's something that's really important for me in looking for people to look up to and associate with, is people who share those values. And I guess like the majority of people, majority of mentors that I've come across with in my life that are still my friends and my mentors today have come through me telling my story to the world and just putting myself out there and saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, can you help? And if so, how? And then using my discretion to kind of be like, okay, I think this is a good match or not. I hope that helps.
I've met my quota on Canadian stereotype jokes, so that's why I left that one alone.
Okay.
Any other questions for Nadia? Anybody? Yes.
So having started not knowing that you were a software founder, how did you find your software team when you first knew that you needed one?
Great question.
Yeah, great question. One I'm still grappling with, to be honest, and getting a lot of help from 43 North with. We're at a new stage now, okay? Things have gotten real. Anyway, so in the beginning, when I won the competition, I actually outsourced the development of the beta or alpha version of the app to China. So I used a program called Odesk, and I went on there and I made specifications that were wildly inappropriate. And then I put them out there to China. I got a development team I paid out there. They gave me back the alpha. It was nothing like I had wanted, but it was my fault because the specifications were so bad. And then tested and iterated. So a lot of to date, it's been outsourced. So outsourced to third parties in different countries. We went from offshore to nearshore. So we have a tech team in Costa Rica now. And finding kind of a technical person on the team was a challenge in Toronto because salaries are crazy in Toronto, and also like just finding somebody who's willing to take the risk in a company like ours. And so like I'm pretty excited right now because we just a couple of days ago launched a job post for a technology, Jen, what's the title that head of product. We landed on a head of product title, we launched that on the job post, and we're getting some resumes in that are pretty exciting. So that's going to be our first full-time team member who's in technology. And like I said, it's been the bane to my existence because I'm not a technology person. But it's something that I'm super, super stoked to fill now, because it's a huge part of our company, and it's something that I don't feel 100% personally confident in. So when I get somebody on the team who can manage that, then we're off to the races.
But just in case any brands are listening, everything works great.
Oh,
now,
everything's
right?
great. Everything's out of control. Don't worry. No.
Perfect.
We for all the brands that we work with, we have to go through extensive IT
Perfect.
security tests and all of that stuff. So we really had to get offshore teams that were reliable and
Good.
and functional as well. So.
All right. Who else has a question? Anybody? Jack.
Hi, Nadia.
Hi.
How do individuals or caregivers, can they access your cards, or do they have to be at the airport or someplace, or do you have something that's more general that they can access?
Okay, so here's the plug. Anybody listening that wants to download the app, it's free. Go to the Android or Apple store and type MagnusCards, one word, and it's a free app for users, so they can just download and access all this content in one place. And that's the beauty of it, because Colgate's doing a marketing campaign that puts us in Times Square, and they're driving traffic to everybody else, all the other brands that are in the app. So it's great association for all the other companies, and that's why we're kind of seeing a snowball effect where more and more people want to get involved. The airports are telling other airports, and they're like, give us the number of this airport, and we want to talk to them and find out how they're using it. Then they call them, and they're like, okay, we're on board. So like it's kind of this domino effect that's happening because everything's in one place, and that sets us apart from anything out there in the market. There's nobody doing anything like this. And we're pretty excited about that, and we're excited to keep innovating to keep that leadership advantage.
And naturally, the incentive, for a brand to want to dedicate their own deck within MagnusCards is, obviously to provide that material to those with autism. But obviously, the end goal is perhaps they'll be buying Colgate, toothpaste, right? So that's the kind of end.
There's tons of things in it for the brands. I mean, number one, it's the right thing to do, right?
Right.
So there's social pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's huge. Like, think about a mom that goes on a plane who is mistreated, or her son is mistreated, and then she tweets that airline is not accessible, and then that's millions of dollars of damage to your reputation. So brands cannot afford not to do this. Another thing is, obviously, they have things for people who are seeing impaired. They have things for people in wheelchairs. This is a market that is underserved. And so we're allowing them to tick that box in a sense of, we have something to offer for people with cognitive special needs. We recognize that this is a huge underserved market, and we want to help. Another thing is their brand promise. So Colgate's brand promise is everyone deserves a future they can smile about. That means everyone. So we're allowing them to be totally inclusive. And yes, the bottom line matters too. So the purchasing decision or the purchasing power is usually with the caregivers, like the siblings or the parents, and et cetera. And whenever I'm out with my brother and he wants to go to have something to eat, okay, we're out with my I got 4 other siblings. So we're out all together, and Troy wants to get something to eat, and he says we're going to KFC. We're all going to KFC, okay? I don't even eat meat, and I'm going to KFC.
Lots of options.
Yeah, so he's dictating the purchasing decisions of all the people in his support network, which includes parents, siblings, caregivers, healthcare providers, doctors, teachers. So they all want to make him happy. So that is definitely a long-term goal for our partners as well.
Saw a couple other hands go up. Maybe? Yes? Questions? Yeah.
Well, I think you partially answered my question, and that was, are you marketing to more than just autism? I understand that autism is your passion. I have a daughter who has had severe anxiety disorder, and I think that these cards might have been extremely helpful for her, or might still be. And certainly people with cognitive impairments, which you just mentioned shortly ago.
Yeah, for sure. So yes, it started with autism, and that was definitely the inspiration. But as we developed further along, and we started getting emails from parents of people who had Down syndrome, or Asperger's, or anxiety, or acquired brain injury. I met with the CFL and the NFL. So like, it's such an expansive opportunity. We've really only scratched the surface of the iceberg. That's 2 idioms in one. Anyway.
Scratch the surface of the iceberg.
So basically, there's applicability across different groups, and even think about people who are neurotypical. It's a weird word, but when they first started inventing their wheelchair ramps, those were only for people with wheelchairs, or it was meant for people with wheelchairs. And now everywhere you go, you want to use the wheelchair ramp because it's easier. It makes life in general for people easier. So this whole like designing with inclusivity in mind is just the smarter thing to do. And it applies to beyond physical spaces. It applies to apps as well. So design your services, design your products, design your experiences with everyone in mind. And that supports a truly accessible world, and that's our mission, is an accessible world where people can navigate with freedom and independence. And why not? You and I do it. Why can't everybody have that power?
I think that's a fantastic place to wrap this up. Ladies and gentlemen, Nadia Hamilton. So thank you so much, Nadia. Thank you, everyone who came out tonight. Thank you to our hosts, Duende. Make sure you share this episode of the podcast and head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review of our show. Just search Latitude, the 43 North Podcast. We've got over 100 episodes of the podcast, and we have several former guests in attendance tonight, so thank you guys for your support. Make sure you leave a 5-star review. The more reviews we have, the more people who hear our show, and that's what we want. We want people to know about all the great things happening in Buffalo and Western New York. And make sure you head on over to the 43 North Job Board, where there's a full listing of all these incredible startup jobs that are happening here in Western New York. There's dozens and dozens of listings on the board right now, and it's a great opportunity to participate in a startup, which is what I think folks like Nadia want, right?
That's right. We're hiring right now. Go on over, check it out, join our team, and make a difference.
So for 43 North, I'm Nate Benson, and we'll see you at the next one.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.